Hello and welcome back from the summer break. We certainly missed you and we hope that you missed us as well. Welcome to this iteration of the e-Estonia digital discussions. We ask a very, very simple question. What is trending in fintech? But arguably the answer to that will be a bit bigger and longer than the question itself. My name is Florian Marcus. I'm a digital transformation advisor at the e-Estonia Briefing Center and I will be your moderator for today. A quick word about the e-Estonia Briefing Center before we start. So we are an organization that helps you deep dive into the digital solutions in Estonia. We explain to you how the digital society works here in Estonia and how you can bring it to your country as well. We offer deep dives and business programs to make sure that we find the right solutions for you and that you can go back home to your country happily and with brand new digital solutions as well. Before we start with our very first speaker, a quick word about the organization, the platform here that we call Works Up. You've got two buttons that are very important for every single speaker on the list. Number one, you've got the details where you can find out more about the speaker that is on stage. Also, there is a Q&A button where you can submit your own questions and you can also upvote other people's questions if you really want to hear the answer to that particular question. Last but not least, you can also fill in your own profile and meet other people that have filled in their profiles, so you can build up new connections while watching this digital discussion as well. But without any further ado, I think it's time to introduce our very first speaker. His name is Kaido Saar. He is the chairman of the Board of FinanceEstonia, and he will give us an insight into what the world of fintechs looks like in Estonia and where it goes in the future as well. Let's take a look after a quick introductory video about FinanceEstonia.
Hi! Do you want to know why fintech companies are coming to Estonia? Or how easy it is to build up the unicorn in Estonia? Or even more, what kind of companies gonna be the next unicorns in Estonia? At first, why fintechs choose Estonia? In Estonia, we have very high quality e-services, which of course are available 24/7. We have ease of establishing a business. If you want to register your own company in Estonia, you can easily do it remotely on distance. What more? In Estonia, we have e-residency program. You can run your company while same time sitting in another country. And through this, your company here can be a very good gateway to your business in entire Europe. In Estonia, we have very good availability of qualified workforce in technology, but also in finance. Estonia has very fintech-friendly regulatory environment. And also, we have very strong relationships with government. For example, I can assure, based on my own experience, that if you have a company, for example, in big-sized country, then you might be treated just as an Excel row. But Estonia is a small country and your company is treated as a company, and not only, you can be treated also as human behind the company. And in Estonia, we have easily accessible funding. Lately, we did a research. Actually, our very good partners, the scientists from Tallinn University of Technology, prepared a study about Estonian fintech landscape. And quick facts from this. In Estonia, we have more than 200 fintech companies. sector is rapidly growing. More than 1 billion assets and more than 2,000 people employed in the sector. Half of Estonian fintechs have been operating 3 to 5 years. This is the picture of Estonian fintech landscape. Of course, it's maybe difficult to understand each single name or logo there, but in general, it gives pretty good overview how does this sector look like in Estonia. But how does a typical Estonian fintech company look like? According to the study, we understood that the most popular category of fintech companies, this is digital assets, 24%. Next one, digital lending. 20% of Estonian fintech companies are operating in this category. Third popular category, this is digital payments. And altogether, these three categories, they make 57% of fintech market in Estonia. And both B2C, B2B, they are covered here in Estonia. 64% of the companies, fintech companies in Estonia, they are operating internationally. And which are these most popular destinations for their expansion? Of course, other EU countries and UK, United States, also Australia, Ukraine, Latin American countries like Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and various countries in Africa. Estonian fintech ecosystem, how does this look? We have very solid fintech ecosystem where in the center is government and governmental institutions. And important role is played also by FinanceEstonia, which is sector cluster organization. Also, various incubators and accelerators. We have Enterprise Estonia, which is supporting the development of a sector. And of course, Estonian Financial Supervisory Authority, which has licensing and controlling role. And altogether, these institutions make Estonian fintech ecosystem. FinanceEstonia, we are 10 years old. We have almost 100 members, 6 core areas. Besides fintech, there are also other areas, but majority of our members are one or other way related to fintech. Estonia is a very small country. 1.3 million people living here. And therefore, Estonia is a perfect place to build up your own startup. It's a perfect place to test your business model and perfect place later on to scale out. What is interesting in Estonia? Typically, Estonian startups, including fintech companies, they are international since the beginning. As we have very limited market size, 1.3 million, Usually it's not feasible to build up your business purely for this market. You need bigger market. For example, one Estonian company, Veriff, doing fraud prevention and identification of people. They have told that if they have built a solution only for Estonia, they should identify each single Estonian 3 times per day. It means for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But why this is needed? No, not needed. This is why Estonian startups are built international since the beginning. And for this, we have seen 7 unicorns in Estonia. It's a really high number if you look at the size of the population. These 7 unicorns are here. Among them, we can see 2 fintech companies as well. Wise, former TransferWise, and Zigo. And I can tell you, there are more in the pipeline. Soon, there will be next unicorns in Estonia, also in fintech sector. And rapidly growing Estonian fintechs can be seen here. I believe one of them gonna be next unicorn here. And if you want to contribute to this list as well, you want to establish your own unicorn in Estonia, then you are welcome here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that interesting insight and overview of the Estonian fintech landscape. It really is. We've got several questions. One of them actually you almost answered in the last slide. If you had to bet on the next fintech unicorn from Estonia, which company would you name if you had to single one out? Would you do that on camera?
I can tell you that in Estonia we have definitely more than one very good fintech company which can be unicorn, and even there on the slide I showed many of them, so I don't want to highlight only one. There are more.
That was one of the most diplomatic answers I've ever seen. Very, very good. What are the main challenges that Estonian fintechs are facing today? What direction do they come from?
Actually, we have very good understanding there because it was covered in a study made by Tallinn University of Technology. And number one challenge what the fintech companies have, this is expansion and finding new customer, providing better service. But this is normal. It should be normal part of every company. So it's very good. It should be number one. But more important, what is number 2 challenge? And what was mentioned, it's a regulatory part. And not only in Estonia, but rather regulations in other countries as well, because if you're here, but you want to provide your services cross-border to other countries, then you have to take into account the regulations here and there, and this is the issue.
And also the second point is not necessarily targeted at Estonian regulations, but also European regulations, EU-wide, and so on. So
exactly, and in European Union, theoretically we should have single market.
Theoretically.
Also in financial sector, but what we see today, that there is no single market functioning properly.
There's one more interesting question that I think we have time for, luckily. What can and should Estonia learn from other countries? As an example, Lithuania has built up a strong fintech country brand. What can we learn from them, for example?
I think Lithuania is a very good sample. They have done very good work in recent years. And well done, Lithuanians. What Estonia can do, I think it's good if we have kind of, let's say, competitors quite close to us. So it should motivate also us to do even more efforts and to talk about ourselves internationally, to motivate companies to build up their business, including unicorns here in Estonia.
And talk about it we do today. Obviously one thing that Lithuania and Estonia have in common is the comparably small home market. So we are all forced to go abroad. We might as well work together, really. Thank you so much, Kaido, for your insights. We are slowly heading over to the next presentation, also with a small video beforehand. The next pitch will be done by Andrus Alber. He is the founder and CEO, a very busy man, of Bankish, and he will tell us more about what exactly they do. Let's take a look.
Bankish, lending and deposit system, from professionals to professionals. Our team has a strong background in finance and IT, with organizations such as the Nasdaq, Microsoft, Nordic, Swedbank and Telia. Most lending systems are developed by teams who have no experience in loan management. We have. Our dashboard presents all the most important information for you in one easy-to-navigate place. You can monitor new applications, loan notices, associated transactions and new messages. Bankish allows you to define and introduce new lending and deposit products within a couple of minutes. Furthermore, Bankish has a customer portal. The customer portal works smoothly on all devices. If you are interested to have more information, please do contact Bankish. Bankish, smarter, simpler and strikingly professional.
A few years ago, when we decided to establish a lending company, we were looking for suitable IT and back office solutions. We discovered that there are three types of solutions in the market. On one hand, very expensive ones, and then there are solutions which cover very limited functionality or just one part of the lending process. And then there are, of course, Excel worksheets. That's when we decided to use our long-term experience in financial services and related IT systems and to establish the deposit and lending software provider Bankish. My name is Andrus Alber, and I'm the founder and CEO of Bankish, and I will tell you how Bankish can help you to overcome the challenges of digital transformation. Over the past decade, we witnessed major technological breakthroughs in almost all industries. Our lives have significantly improved by the likes of smartphones, e-commerce, mobility, to name just a few. In finance, we have taken baby steps since 1970s. Until just recently, only the biggest banks were able to afford software solutions to fit their needs. The rest of the credit providers were left with limited solutions. That's where we believe Bankish can help. Bankish is an easy-to-use toolbox for various back-office activities, and it also has end-customer self-service portal. Bankish offers modular structure and allows you to launch immediately any loan products, as Bankish includes solutions for payday loans, mortgage-backed loans, leasing, factoring, credit lines, and so on. All new products can be easily defined from drop-down menus without the need to hire IT developers. Actually, many of our clients do not have any internal IT team whatsoever. We take care of the IT so they can focus on customers. Software as a service model and broad functionality makes Bankish suitable and affordable solution for very broad range of lending companies, both for those who are professional lenders as well as those who plan to enter the market either as new digital players or as retailers who want to expand their offering to clients into buy now, pay later or similar products. So if you want to make life easier, both to your staff and clients, Bankish is for you. And of course, your shareholders will be happy as well, as you will save money and have more customers. We, from our side, stay ready to provide you our advice in digital transformation and the launch of digital services. If you'd like to find out more about Bankish, please visit our stand at Money 2020 next week in Amsterdam. Follow us on LinkedIn or send us an email or call us. And I hope you will stay online to listen to our panel discussion where we will talk about Foundation for Modern Banking. Thank you.
Andrus, thank you so much for your quick pitch and introduction. We've got actually too many questions to ask, so maybe you will get some emails later on, which we very much encourage you do. Let's see. Is your software solution suitable only for financial companies, or are there situations where a wholesale company or a production company might also use it?
Definitely, the potential list of clients is broader than financial services companies. You mentioned wholesale companies. Many of them are looking at our factoring module, or companies with large retail client base are thinking today, why should I focus only on cooperating with one bank? Why not to offer buy now, pay later through my own balance sheet, through my own solution? So definitely also other companies, not just financial services companies.
And especially eliminating those IT teams inside, I think that saves a lot of, not just time and money, but also stress.
Absolutely.
I think it's fair. Maybe a bit off the beaten path question. What was the most shocking example of old banking infrastructure that you've seen in recent years where you think like, you guys should take Bankish, please?
When we visited some credit unions, then we wanted to talk about digital journey for their customers, customer onboarding. But one of the first questions was, can you connect your system to our printer so that we can print checking books? So definitely there we realized that you can't really start talking about APIs and all those buzzwords or artificial intelligence, machine learning. There are many more basic steps that first need to be made, and this is where we believe that our experience in financial services, not just in IT, can be of support to them as well.
I just have to ask very quickly, we don't have to mention any names, but was that an EU country?
Let's put it so that it was an EU country quite recently.
Okay. All right. There's a very small list of those countries that fall into that category. Andros, thank you so much for your insights, and thank you also for the questions that you provide from the audience. Please keep them coming in the Q&A section as well. We are heading over to our next pitch. It will be done by Lauri Teder. He is the CEO and founder of EveryPay. There will be a small introductory video, and then he will show his pitch. Let's take a look.
Hello, I'm Christian, co-founder of EveryPay. EveryPay is a fully cloud-based Estonian fintech payment gateway provider. And since 2012, we've become one of the fastest growing and leading digital payment solution providers in Northern Europe. EveryPay helps you to stay on top of the digital payments game. Our state-of-the-art platform is made to serve you and your customers. We are making the integration process as easy as possible. And our qualified service team is there to help you and support you in all of your digital payment needs so that you and your customers can focus on scaling and growing your businesses. Our platform has been built from ground up, which means that we can add new features on the go, such as frictionless one-time integrations, smart white label solutions, fast and professional customer support team, easy to use acquire and merchant portal, and a full 360-degree solution. EveryPay makes your payments fast, easy and secure. Follow us on everypay.com.
There are around 5,000 banks in Europe, and many of them are losing acquiring revenues because their payment gateway solutions are not meeting market expectations. Our customers had the similar challenges. Do you have the same problem? My name is Lauri, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of EveryPay. EveryPay is a fully cloud-based payment gateway platform for financial institutions. In 6 years, we have become the biggest payment gateway platform in the Baltics. And our mission is to empower banks and financial institutions and help them to become more agile and relevant in the fast-changing digital payments environment. And it is changing fast. There are regulatory changes like PSD2 and the Open Banking Initiative. Moreover, even customers are expecting more from the service providers. They want all the relevant payment methods from one service provider, and the payment gateway solution must meet and support many payment scenarios, from simple one-time payments to more sophisticated, recurring and automated payments. Developing such a solution in-house might be for small and medium-sized banks a mission impossible, but it is not a mission impossible for global leading payment service providers. If your customers won't get the service from you, they get it elsewhere. You lose your customer and revenue. But it doesn't have to be so. The biggest banks in the Baltic, SEB Bank, Swedbank, and LHV Bank, are relying on their online payments offering on EveryPay platform. Let me share an example. SEB Bank launched their new pan-Baltic e-commerce payment solution recently. They used to have many different solutions across 3 countries which didn't meet the market needs anymore. In less than 6 months, we replaced their old and outdated systems with EveryPay cloud-based platform. Now, they have SEB-branded payment gateway solution. It is one-stop shop for their merchants. One agreement, one integration with all the relevant payment methods and tools to manage their online payments. We have built a cloud-based white-label payment gateway platform. It provides the same features as global leading payment service providers, including online card payments and alternative payment methods. It has all the relevant tools to support both the acquiring side and the merchant side of the business, and you can have it all with your own branding. We could set up your new payment gateway platform within 3 months. After that, EveryPay ensures that the platform will continuously develop while you can focus on scaling your business. I am Lauri. If you're interested more about EveryPay, contact us or meet us at Money 2020 next week in Amsterdam.
Lauri, thank you so much for taking the time to give your pitch. We've got already some questions as well. The first question you sort of answered, how long does it take you guys to implement your solutions? So anywhere between 3 and 6 months, would that be all right?
Yes, that's
okay.
The average.
And one thing that came up in my head while I was watching, how does your business model work? Would it be a one-off fee, or is it like a monthly subscription model? How exactly do you make it work?
Of course, there is a kind of a rollout project with a partner bank or financial institution.
Yes.
There is a fee for that. But after that, there is, of course, it's about the negotiations.
Of course.
And, but we do support both scenarios. It can be either a one-time monthly fee or based on the payment volumes. So we are flexible.
This is the kind of flexibility that I actually like. I see many bigger companies around the world that just say, this is the deal, take it or leave it. But the sort of, whether it's a monthly or in terms of the volume, I like that very much. Yeah. 2 more questions came in. What is your view on open banking? Has it been welcomed by the end users? And how has it helped the banks and merchants themselves?
Yeah, this is our favorite topic nowadays. We've been adding and implementing the possibilities based on the open banking initiative into EveryPay platform as well. And we've been on board since the very beginning, roughly 2 years ago. And we can say that it is accepted very well by the end users or the payers, especially in our region, in the Baltics. The bank links have been the very popular online payment method, but the open banking has enabled to provide the same solution for more and more merchants. So now it's much easier for the merchants to get the same service from their home bank that they didn't get before.
Yeah, once again, much more flexibly than before.
Indeed.
There are more questions, but I think you will also discuss those things during the upcoming panel discussion, so I will leave that for later.
All right.
Thank you so much, Lauri, for being with us, and we are heading over to our next pitch. It is done by Rivo Uibo. He is the CBO and co-founder of Modular Bank. If that name gives away what they do, please hold your breath because we will have an introductory video and then a small pitch from him. Let's take a look.
Technology is supposed to make things easier, automatic, seamless, time-saving. Instead, it's often broken and buggy and just not fit for people. But humans shouldn't work with bad tech, and no business should be held back by dysfunctional systems. Some people get it, so we built Modular Bank, a banking platform in a box. Modular Bank is banking as a service for both new and existing financial institutions. It has everything a bank or credit institution needs for compliant day-to-day operations. You can launch new business lines or replace broken systems, introduce new services with very little development, set up new loan and deposit products, and get a real-time view of your banking business. Modular Bank is based on the microservices architecture. Each module is a separate service offered over APIs. This plug-and-play model lets you add new services at ease. Modular Bank can be implemented as software as a service, removing the maintenance burden and cutting operational costs. Or you can run it in-house with full control over the platform. Build or transform your financial institution in weeks with Modular Bank.
Wise, Revolut, Klarna. Have you ever even thought, why do these institutions exist? At the same time, there are on a global basis more than 25,000 regulated banking entities out there. They do have the customer base. They have the intimate know-how about the instruments. They do have the balance sheet. And yet, while looking all of this enormous market power, we can still ask, why do these kind of fintechs still emerge? The answer relies in the element that those institutions still run on the legacy technologies, and it is super hard to make them to align with the ever-changing market demands. My name is Rivo Uibo, and I'm the co-founder at Modular Bank, which is the next generation core banking suite and which enables the incumbent banks to become more nimble as the newcomers. 80% out from those incumbent organizations, they are still bound and using the legacy technologies over there. And these systems are not meant for the real-time operations. The configuration aspects are completely missing, and they cannot also unlock the data assets they have gathered. And that is the sole reason why the consumers and customers alike go and use and consume the services of the fintechs. Nobody, literally nobody, wakes up in the morning with the sole idea that, hey, today I really want to do some banking. No, everybody has a certain set of aspirations that you want to fulfill. Therefore, in order to take back the control, the banks need to start changing the core of their operations. And that is namely with the help of the likes of modular banking technologies. The founding team at Modular Bank have been building the core banking infrastructure for decades for large Nordic banks and regulated financial institutions, and being also awarded for this on a global level. So in 2019, we decided to consolidate all of that know-how, and Modular Bank was born. Either for retail or business banking landscape, we have it all, starting from the multi-currency transactional accounts up to different flavors of financing and lending scenarios, or even sorts of payment cards, up to the real-time financial accounting. APIs are meant for the easy integration. At the same time, the launch of the platform is configuration-driven and also can run on whatever kind of infrastructure out there. And then modularity. This gives the aspect for a gradual change. Let me bring you one example. One of the largest universal banks in the Nordics was able to decrease the operating cost base in minimum 10 times and increase the business volumes over 300% by utilizing the wonderful capabilities of Modular Bank. And finally, Modular Bank helps the banks to tackle three elements all at once. At first, you can have immediate positive impacts on the bottom line of your business operations. Secondly, it helps you to support also the near short-term goals, like to run the bank in real time, offer individualized servicing. And thirdly, and most importantly, it will future-proof your banking operations, so that every bank is able to also cater the needs of other ecosystems and e-commerce sites and environments out there. And as a last element, myself and our team at Modular Bank are also present at Amsterdam next week, attending Money 2020. Feel free to reach us over there, or check out our website, modularbank.co.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that insight into what you do. We've got plenty of questions. We will not have time for all of them, but we have a panel discussion with you soon as well. The first question is, could you tell us about a notable customer or some sort of case study of what's been possible with Modular Bank?
We have a number of case studies. The first one, even actually this is the first customer we landed. A global banking group and a lender, active in 23 countries globally. You can imagine this enormous complexity, multiple jurisdictions, 12 different currencies, different product teams, and so forth. And with the help of Modular Bank, the new Revolut type of a core banking system was up and running within 5 months. And these are the time frames that are completely unparalleled out there in the industry.
Yeah, that's very fast actually and very complex as you said. One thing, maybe looking into the crystal ball, are there any future modules that you're still working on? Anything that's still missing or anything that you're planning for the future?
Absolutely. The banking will never be ready. So that as of today, we are also expanding into the complex corporate banking use case areas, and at the same time touching and seeing what can we do in the digital asset and crypto space, because we cannot ignore those trends that are happening inside of the decentralized finance and crypto world.
They are here to stay, so we might as well deal with them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Rivo, thank you so much for your insights. We are heading over to our first panel discussion with representatives from the previously seen companies. Before we do that, we will also have a quick video about Digital Estonia overall, and the panel itself will be led by my lovely colleague Annette Numa, who is a fellow digital transformation advisor at the e-Estonia Briefing Center. Please enjoy and have fun, and don't forget to ask questions as well. See you on the other side.
Estonia is a country with fast in its DNA. A lot can happen here in 30 minutes. Register for e-residency and do business at cyber speed. Form a company in 18 minutes. Or file your taxes in 3. Cast a vote in seconds via the internet. We're also fast when it comes to new legislation, like when we legalized self-driving cars. Innovation is in our DNA. Estonia, where bright ideas meet a can-do spirit.
And also greetings from my side. Very happy to kick off the first panel of this digital discussion here on the topic of foundations for modern banking. I'm delighted to be back here on a stage with these 3 amazing company representatives as well here. Before we start with the first question, also a little bit overview and before I introduce our speakers here. So when we talk about a channel like banking sector and financial service providers, today, when we consider their future trends, they also need kind of like new methods to communicate with their customers and improve their financial services and rapidness as well. While automating a lot of work processes, which is obvious, and of course also besides that, always keeping in mind that high-level customer experience needs to be provided to their loyal customers. But the question raises here, how do our companies help to make banking faster, safer, and of course also easier? When we think about nowadays, so I would say possibly there is absolutely no better time than today to go through this digital transformation, and especially by the time of pandemic, where there was absolutely no other choice here. And economic fundamentals today are very strong. Of course, also the regulatory climate is favorable, and transformation technologies are much more accessible and of course also powerful and economical than ever before. So in this discussion, we are going to focus on the issues that banking sectors are today facing, and of course also what are the latest technologies for the banks to really level up their digital banking services. I'm happy to introduce our panelists today. First of all, I have here with me a company representative from Everypay, who is Christian Novitsky. He's the co-founder, so as Florian said before, very busy person. Secondly, as you heard already before, Andrus Alber, who is also founder and CEO of Bankish company. And last but not least, we have Rivo Uibo, who is the CEO and co-founder, as all the other panelists as well here, from a company called Modular Bank. With the first question that I would like to kick off here, when we talk about innovation in fintech, and I would say they have potential to make financial services more secure, convenient, and of course also affordable for the customers. In your point of view, what are the biggest challenges that banks and financial institutions are facing today, and how to overcome these challenges. Maybe I would start with you here, Christian. What's your opinion? What are the biggest challenges that our banks and in general like financial institutions are facing today, and what's your solution to overcome them?
I think if we talk about banks, then the biggest challenges for banks are the banks themselves, the way they have been set up and how keen they're actually to keep up with the innovation, how keen they're actually in terms of changing their status quo and working together with fintechs in order to offer the kind of innovative solutions out there developed by fintechs to their customers. If we talk about fintechs in general, that's a little bit different picture where I see that the kind of challenges are with the regulation and the rules not being similar in all different markets, as well as the adoption of technologies are completely different amongst consumers.
All right, maybe to move over here, the same question also to Rivo. In your point of view, what are the challenges that you are helping the companies to overcome right now?
When we look at the BFSI industry and those accounts out there, we see that the kind of a key challenge they are faced with is how to remain relevant. Because the competition is coming now basically from every angle out there in the business. So which means that if you're a bank nowadays, those are not anymore fintechs who are coming and trying to eat your business, but also like all sorts of embedded banking use cases out there in different verticals. So which means that the competition is super high and banks need to find a way and a reason how to remain relevant. And secondly, the thing what is also tightly connected with the first point is that the way how they are set up both process and technology wise, because the rigid processes and technologies are also definitely like prohibiting them to bring the innovation to the market and be relevant. So therefore there is out there with the likes of Modular Bank who are helping the banks to focus on the value added aspects, and we take care of all the rest of the burden, how this kind of a banking business can run.
All right. Now moving to Andrus, to you. If we speak about the solution provided by Bankish company, could you tell us a little bit more in details? How does your solution provided by Bankish would help companies to manage these risks that were just pointed out before here? How is it solved?
Yeah, I think I fully agree with previous comments that it's a lot about the internal processes and decision making, and what was not mentioned but has to be mentioned in financial services is the regulatory aspects, regulatory burden. So we see one of the main challenges, especially for smaller market participants, is how to balance the expectations of customers for improved digital solutions and at the same time the regulatory restrictions. So what Bankish is trying to do is to show to also smaller credit unions, banks, regional banks, credit associations, that you don't need to have a budget of 1 million or 2 million euros and a 2-year project to change things. So you can start offering pretty quickly new services to your clients, at the same time offering them through secure IT systems which are regularly upgraded, new services brought to the market without the need to have internal IT team.
This is exactly actually what I wanted to also discuss with other companies, because when we think about this entire process of transformation to digital services, which most of the banks today have to do, does their budget really has to scale up to thousands of euros to afford this kind of transformation, or is it, do they also need kind of like to have in-house IT knowledge to succeed? Or again, as I understood from your pitches as well, that you actually provide a little bit more simple solution and of course also more affordable solution, so that they really don't have to spend that high amount of money to go through the most simple transformation processes. Maybe Christian, from your side.
I mean, there's like two sides of it in my view. I mean, one view is that we know how harsh the kind of competition for good IT talent is and how IT dependent any kind of business these days has become. So the banks have an opportunity to kind of choose, which projects they would assign their resource into. So if there's like, let's say that uncrucial or not core related or some kind of parts of the business that they could offer into someone else's hands to take care of, that immediately means that they have the resource to allocate somewhere else. Maybe it's like to be competitive or better in the front end and to be better out visible for the customers. Whereas technology companies like ourselves, we take care on the back end side, and what they have is they have this kind of, I would say that they have this kind of multiplied or kind of a wider experience knowledge-based solution that they have immediate access to without actually having to put all of the resources into it themselves.
Andres, you wanted to reflect on what Christian just said.
I want to say that I think where a lot of understanding has started to change is that if you're not happy with your core system and IT solutions, you do not need to change everything immediately against a new but still a huge complex system. Like Modular Bank, the same way Bankish is offering different modules, so you can change some parts first, you can test the new solutions, then decide whether I want to really go to the full change of services. So it doesn't have to be a huge complex project always that lasts long years and takes huge amount of money.
And what about Modular Bank? If you think about offering your service, do our companies who are listening to us today, or it's just financial institutions today, have to really scale up their budget to afford solution that a Modular Bank is providing, or is there any ways to afford also maybe a little bit something less expensive as well?
As the name says, Modular Bank, that means that you can really pick and choose the capabilities that you require. And that is the thing that we at Modular Bank, we have a huge belief that the change is possible and the success is built on top of the success. And that also means that you can pick one line of business, modernize this business area, and suddenly you realize that you have come a long way and you have already eliminated all of the burdens and so forth, which means that expanding later, for example, you start with consumer finances, move over to SME lending and also to something much more complex like mortgage lending or complex business loans and project financing. But once you do the first step, you decommission the old stuff, and suddenly the cost base to operate and run your systems has decreased significantly, and you can spend all of that money to acquire a new set of customers. So yes, the things have changed on the market. Technology is much more ready to support the change, and also it is possible to empower the banks themselves to carry out those kind of initiatives.
Great. What I wanted to remind you, our audience who are virtually listening to us right now, is also that you have a chance to ask questions. You can choose our Q&A section there, post your questions, and I will ask also these questions from our panelists here. But right now I would move on to the next question that I have prepared for our panelists. When we talk about open APIs, they have become common method to support open banking, but they can also be very costly to deploy and may lack of flexibility to meet some institutional needs. What makes your solution attractive? Christian, from your side.
Yeah, I think to some extent, I wouldn't completely agree with that. I think it has actually been a significant enabler for innovation in everything fintech related actually. And our solution, EveryPay solution, is fully cloud-based, very easy API, and we kind of take away actually the heavy technical burden either from the banks or as well as their customers, merchants, in order to help them with the integration and put that at ease. So I think this is a kind of a not very justified concern, to be honest.
All right. But now maybe to move over more to the regulatory climate side. When we talk about access to open banking, this has to be, of course, organized, structured, and secure with overall governance guidelines and of course, also regulations and standards that should really help to harmonize data collection from different entities as well. Being one of the most heavily regulated industries, I would say what banking really is today, banks and financial service companies, providers must be compliant with a host of laws and policies today, and so without becoming also paralyzed by regulations. Do you feel that regulatory climate today is favorable for innovation today? For you, Rivo?
We think that open banking and PSD2, for example, is a great enabler out there because it really made a difference so that it's useful both for the consumers and banks themselves, because banks used to cater only the internal needs. Now they need to expose themselves and also open up for additional market participants. On the other angle, it is good for the consumers because they have alternative payment rails compared to the, let's say, card networks and so forth. So for us, this is absolutely a great example how regulation can be enabler. Of course, there is a great maturity curve to go through, but nevertheless, the beginning, like the first steps have been done. Secondly, there is a topic about mentality, that banks need to study how to let go. That means that they can and should rely with the likes of modular bank, the systems which are already built to be compliant from the first days onwards, and that would also like help the regulated entities to get rid of the regulatory burden and also concentrate more on the value-adding activities over there.
But what about you in Bankish, Andros? Do you feel that all these regulations are stopping the innovation in the banking sector, or can you keep up with all this regulation inside?
I think actually the advantage for financial sector companies to partner with companies like Bankish, who is a software as a service provider, means that they do not need to spend all the time themselves following all the changes in regulations. They know that by having an outside partner who has multiple clients, they regularly work themselves to be AML compliant, know your customer compliant, GDPR compliant, so you can just run your core business. And I also think that regulators themselves have started to be, over years, more innovative. Many regulators have opened so-called sandboxes where new solutions can be tested. Let's say 5-10 years ago, a cloud-based servers for banks were probably rather no-go from the side of regulators. Today, they accept that a lot of services are offered by the partners, not bank themselves. Solutions are cloud-based. So I think here regulators are also accepting that technology is today developing quite fast and offering new opportunities for customers as well as banks.
For our delegations that usually visit the e-Estonia Briefing Center, many people are looking for different numbers and really a concrete case studies of success stories. I would turn the same question to you, all of our panelists today here. If you could make an overview or just bring me a couple of concrete examples, how banks or financial service providers have really benefited from your solution.
Yeah. I think, we're a pretty easy case to prove, actually. I mean, considering the innovation, the kind of how innovative Estonia is and what kind of business we have here, I mean, we're proud to say with EveryPay that on a domestic market, we could say that more than half of all the online e-commerce transactions at one point or the other touch our platform. So I don't think there's a lot of other democratic, actually, countries or markets in democratic countries which could actually prove the same case. But if we go by case basis, basically, I think it's the same key points which I pointed out, or which was pointed out by other panelists here as well. We have significantly kind of taken the weight off the shoulders of the banks using us in terms of regulatory requirements in that specific payments area. We've significantly improved their value proposition to their customers. And at the same time, we enabled them not only to save cost, but also to allocate their internal resources to work on other projects whilst we take care of one important part of their business.
Rio, what about you? Any concrete examples that you could just very quickly bring it out to our audience here?
Absolutely. One of the largest universal banks up in the Nordics. The board tasked the mission with the consumer finances business line that, hey guys, you need to triple the number of originated loans per month. The team looked at what are the current capacities. It took the guys in minimum 6 months to change a simple value of a parameter like interest rate. And the cost base for that one was in minimum 100,000 euros. So how can you really sustain such kind of scenario and grow the business that much? So they took the modules from Modular Bank, made a rapid launch, and now suddenly the business is agile and also fully digitalized. Because also that's also important aspect what we saw now during the COVID. The branches were closed, and all such kind of things as like premature repayments, asking for a payment holiday and so forth. The bank needs to support such kind of journeys in a super seamless manner. And therefore, at the end, the customer was able to decrease the operating cost base in minimum 10 times and increase the business volumes over 300%.
Wow. So we really got the concrete numbers here. Do you have any concrete numbers or Sanders to share with us?
Yeah, I think the example that I would give was with a credit union who a few years ago, when we talked to them, said that no, we're happy with our IT system, so we were not looking to change it. But then when COVID came, they realized suddenly that, first of all, they're not able to handle very quickly payment holidays and changes of payment schedules for the customers. Secondly, remote working of their staff, secure connections from home offices suddenly became an issue. So they came back to us and said, how quickly can you change our core system, taking our size, our model of business? And we said we can do it in a couple of months. So actually, before COVID was ended, they already had their all IT systems running on Bankish, being able to handle deposits, handle new loan applications, handle collateral management, payment holidays. Everything is today running on Bankish.
So we can see these transformations can happen very, very fast. Now, if we talk about investments in fintech companies, I mean, it's expected to really continue to grow very, very fast. And this is what we see by the latest number almost every day on different kind of newspapers. We hear about how, again, there has been such a big investments to the fintech companies as well. This is your chance now to maybe with one or two sentences to tell our audience what makes your company to stand out for investors. What's the unique side that anybody who is listening or watching the recording later would feel like, okay, I really want to invest in that company because they have this niche there?
Okay, then let me start then. Obviously, we have the tailwinds pushing our business. The e-commerce is growing very rapidly all around the globe, and we, being positioned in Eastern European markets, we have very easy access to all of the growing markets in e-commerce. Our business has been growing multiple times over the last few years, and at the same time, we're happy to say that we have zero churn from our customers. So I don't think there's not that many businesses out there like that.
Great. Andres?
Yeah, I think two aspects perhaps to emphasize. One is that our team's background is very heavily on financial services. So we're not just an IT company who one week develops something for plumbers, next week are hospitals, and third week for banks. We are, with our background in financial services for more than 20 years. And secondly, when here Rivo previously mentioned that there are 25,000 banks in the world who probably could use upgrade to their IT systems, then we focus on smaller market participants, and there are already hundreds of thousands of those credit unions, credit associations, or wholesalers, retailers who want to start offering financial services. These are our target groups.
And Rivo?
Absolutely. There is one very distinguishing aspect, namely the co-founding team at Modular Bank. This is the industry experience. So that we have been building core banking infrastructure past 20 years, and we counted that we have done that for over more than 15 commercial banks, building those from ground up. Because we see many of the competition just thinking that banking technology or a fintech it's a sexy area, let's do something cool because the investments are, let's say, the money is just flying around, let's do something cool. But in our case, we know the industry, we know the regulations, the products, and the way how those institutions work. And that is a very distinguishable characteristic. Even one of the C-level executive at large banking group looked at us and said that, hey guys at Modular Bank, compared to the competition, you're running on the fifth or sixth generation, the way how things are done, whereas the competition is rather touching the surface on the first or 1.5 generations. So that the team has been constantly pushing the boundaries and outperforming basically the global competition in this space.
Great. Now to sum it up from my side, because we want to be on time, with of course also the next presenters here, I would like to thank our panelists for a very great overview. And again, if you're looking for a partner in your banking financial service provider, then I think these guys here on the stage should be your future, considering if you really want to scale it up and bring your business on a next level. So we're going to continue with 2 more presentations, and my lovely colleague Florian Marcus will take it over from here and introduce who is the next speaker on the stage. So thank you from my side, and I will see you already in the next panel in the next 10 minutes.
Hello guys, I'm back. You can't believe it. We've got 2 more pitches, as my lovely colleague Annette already mentioned, and I want to introduce the very first one immediately. After a quick introductory video, we will see and hear more from Lukas Ilves. He's the head of strategy for Guard Time, and we'll find out more about what they do exactly. Let's take a look.
Good morning. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about blockchain. Now, the last couple of years have been incredibly exciting and a bit of a roller coaster for cryptocurrencies. And we've seen really almost in a matter of months, not even years, the emergence of an entirely new sector, decentralized finance. In spite of all this, I think we're only getting started with what is going to be over the next decade, the tokenization of everything. And when I say everything, I really mean everything. Of course, we're talking about assets, securities, many of which are already being tokenized, money, where central banks across the world are talking about the introduction of digital currency, more complicated, perhaps less liquid assets, whether they're environmental rights or even wine bottles, which are being tokenized and turning into investable assets. But we're not just talking about assets, also critical information, whether the digital twin of a COVID vaccine or the log file from your cloud deployment. All of these things are going to be tokenized and put on the blockchain, and that is going to bring incredible value. It's going to allow unparalleled automation, transparency, security. It's going to power the next decade of digital transformation. But there's a problem. And that problem is a scalability bottleneck of blockchain. Now, Bitcoin and Ethereum, they scale to tens of transactions per second, and settlement requires tens of minutes, if not hours. The world's fastest blockchain networks today offer speed and throughput in the tens of thousands of transactions per second. And that's good. That's an impressive feat of engineering, but it's simply not enough for a world of tokenized assets, tokenized exchange of value, and entirely new asset classes. And this is where Guard Time comes in. For more than a decade, we've been using our hyperscalable blockchain technology to help the world's government and leading critical major industries solve their cybersecurity challenges and their supply chain challenges. Now, in the last few years, we've developed a digital currency platform that solves the scalability bottlenecks of blockchain in a more general way. What am I talking about when I talk about scalability? Well, in testing with the world's leading central banks and private financial institutions, we've shown that we can offer transactions at a very low cost, thousands of a cent per transaction and an even smaller environmental footprint, millions of a gram of CO2 per transaction, with settlement speed under a second, and perhaps most importantly, doing all of this at throughputs of millions of transactions per second with nothing in the way to doing tens of millions and hundreds of millions. We're going to be launching and talking publicly much more about this platform in the next couple of months. Right now, we're looking for financial institutions, for fintechs, for banks, and for others who are looking to occupy the commanding heights of the tokenized economy for the next decade. If that sounds like you, we'd love to have a conversation about how we can work together. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much for that insight of what Guardtime does in this area. We've got one question here that was already sort of touched upon, but maybe you can expand a bit more. Yeah. You mentioned central banks and projects there. Could you tell us more, what exactly were the targets of those projects and what were the results?
Yeah. Well, I mean, central banks across the world are looking at issuing their own digital currencies, so an equivalent to cash or fiat money that would perhaps be tokenized, perhaps held in accounts. And what I can say is that we've been working with some of the most advanced and the largest central banks in this area to validate and test our technology, and they're quite interested. And I think more broadly, this is part of the, money is going to be one of the assets that really transforms in the next decade. And central banks, of course, also have competition for a change. It's not just the monopoly that they have on the issuance of money, because they have to think about how they relate in a landscape of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and an increasingly rich asset space.
You're giving me wonderful segues. Thank you very much. The next question actually comes from a cryptocurrency-minded person, sort of a technological direction. If you could compare your scalable blockchain solution or what you envisage in that space to anything that is currently globally used, what would be the closest in terms of scalability and so on?
I don't really think there is a parallel. I mean, because of the way in which we're able to handle parallelization, we can simply outperform pretty much everything out there by a factor of 100.
Well, that's a pretty bold statement, and I'm sure that
it is, and we look forward to proving it.
As you should, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lukas, for your insights. We are heading over to the last, but definitely not least, presentation pitch of today's event. It is by Taavi Tamkivi, who is the founder and CEO of Salve Technologies, and we will see and find out more about what they do in a second. Let's take a look.
Every year, criminals launder trillions of dollars.
That's enough money to vaccinate the entire world against COVID-19 dozens of times.
Or to provide high-quality, free schooling to every child across Europe.
Under current compliance practices, less than 2% of this money is identified, stopped, and confiscated.
Which means 98% of it continues to fund crime.
Financial institutions are trying, but they simply cannot see the whole picture.
They're using technology developed in the 1970s.
They're operating in isolation, while criminals work across borders. That's why we built AML Breach, the information and data exchange platform that helps financial institutions fight crime more effectively.
It allows banks to collect the missing puzzle pieces by securely connecting them with other banks and regulators.
Creating a data-rich network that levels the playing field against criminals, across borders and across legal jurisdictions.
Let's destroy the criminals' business models.
Let's make AML Breach the new standard in crime fighting. Hello everyone. I want to talk about a massive problem in the world that's increasing crime around us. If you think about human trafficking from Belarus, if you think about corruption in Afghanistan, if you think about the investment scam that maybe your friends or family are getting, or if you think about the environmental crime, this is all getting worse and worse. And why it is so? It is because it's so easy to launder the criminal proceeds that criminals are making from these activities. And about $4 trillion every year is being laundered, and less than 1% of that is being caught. That's the problem that my team is resolving now. For that, we have built up a platform which is called AML Bridge, which helps banks and fintechs to exchange information about possible crime, about suspicious transactions, high-risk customers between themselves in a fast and secure way. And it really helps them because criminals are working in the networks, but today banks and fintechs are working in silos and they need to come together to beat the financial crime. And we have great proof that actually the technology that we have built already works. We have won, over the last year, we have won 90% or 99% of one specific market. And the majority of Estonian banks are already using the Bridge platform. They're exchanging messages every day, tens of messages about the possible crime, about suspicious transactions. And the first tens of thousands of euros are being already saved thanks to the platform that they're using. So there is a great evidence, a great belief in us. And all these banks are actually now inviting their colleagues from other institutions, from the banks and from the fintechs to join the network because they see that there is a real benefit in it. And also these banks trust us because we have built a team which is experts, crime fighting experts, technology experts, We have worked together back in Skype, we have worked together back in Wise, and now we're building our own company, and this trust is actually visible in the banks as well. But unfortunately, crime doesn't stop on the borders of Estonia or any country. Criminals are working internationally. There are international networks. And that's why we are expanding our bridge network to other countries and other financial sectors as well. So we're working closely with the Baltics, we're working closely with UK, who's there is already great passion and projects to kick off the bridges in these countries. There are regions outside of Europe, financial centers, which are really interested to work with us. And together with these kind of innovative places, innovative companies, we know that we can beat financial crime. And if your company or your government, you're part of the FSA, FIU, please come to us at Money 2020 next week and talk to us. So we'll explain how you can join us and help to beat the financial crime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tavi. It seems like almost everybody's going to be at Money 2020. It almost seems like there is some sort of Estonian pavilion that you should go visit in Amsterdam, where all of these different fintechs are going to be present as well. We've got several questions. I don't know if we can go through all of them, but we'll try. So your work requires collaboration in a sort of no-trust environment by nature, and not just between the banks, but also the public sector. Who is usually the hardest partner to get on board for cross-border AML data exchange?
It's a really good question. These are the people, different people in the banks, in the FSAs, in the FIUs. There are multiple decision makers, multiple layers, and we need to build trust among each of them. We need to bring people together, like in Amsterdam, in Vilnius, in London, to get them around the table, to talk to each other, to have a common lunch, to explain their worries. And this is the foundation of the trust building. And on the top of that, we can build and share technology as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Would you say that the crimes in these different areas that have become public over the last few years, that they've made your work a bit easier because you can justify it more easily? Have they created more interest towards your solution?
Yes, that's true. That the money laundering usually is invisible. No one sees it. There are no victims close to the money, and no one is blaming banks because of money laundering.
Yeah.
But actually, the real crime, scam, spam, fraud, these are the smaller amounts, but people around us are suffering. They're losing their life savings, they're losing their loans, and it's more emotional to work with this kind of fraud, but it's tiny comparing to the real money laundering. But definitely this kind of PR made by the fraudsters helps to expand the story that we're telling about the actual money laundering fighting as well.
So there is an AML bridge happening in Estonia. How's that going these days?
It's really incredibly well, because banks, as I said, they are trusting the system, they're trusting each other, they're exchanging messages. I see every day tens of messages going back and forth about possible crime, confirmed crime, prevented losses. And now, we just last night came back from Lithuania, where Lithuanian banks and fintechs are super eager to join the platform network as well. So it's expanding as every good, well-performing network between the people.
As it should, yeah. Very good, Tavi. Thank you so much for your thoughts, and thank you guys for the questions as well. We are heading over to the last part of today's event, which is the second panel discussion, again led by Anett Numa, with 3 panelists once again. Thanks so much for now for all of the different questions. Please feel free to submit more during the panel discussion as well. We will have a small video beforehand about what we call the digital testbed framework. What does that mean, and what can it do for you, and what can you do for it? Let's find out.
So starting today, we are launching the digital testbed framework to really invite anyone and everyone from the very wide world to come work with us, build and try next solutions with us on top of our existing digital government stack. So essentially what the framework is about is that the same legal setup we had tried domestically, we can now do with anyone from wherever you come from. It's ideal for startups, but we welcome anyone. Whether you're a big company, working around the globe, whether you're a researcher, somebody with just a cool idea on your own, doesn't matter. What matters for us is what you basically bring to the table. If you think you have something that would be a great complement to our digital government setup, to our services we offer to the people and the e-residents around the world, talk to us. What essentially we offer in return for you is you get access to the platforms we run. So basically, you need to integrate with digital identity, you need to build the next road, fine. What you also get is our know-how. So basically know-how from building out the digital government we have done so far, know-how of the users we have, so forth. Also data, of course, because a lot of products and next solutions depend on data. What we get in return, obviously, is your solution, your idea. And if it all works out, what comes out of this is the same stuff that we have seen already happen before a few times. What can come out of it in an ideal case, if we have a match between what you propose and what we need, is that from Estonian government side, yes, we get the very useful solution, the next great sort of addition to our digital government for free. You get a proved product, a proved solution that you can take to the wide world. And believe me, there are many countries sort of looking forward to you bringing it to them. Plus, on our end, what we also promise is that obviously we'll promote the hell out of you. So in that sense, look, we'll be only happy to say that you work with us, and it's a good reference, hopefully, to take abroad. So basically, long story short, we have seen the values of open innovation and being open for partnerships. We have sought ways to make the chances of these partnerships happen more systematically. We came up with a solution, and now we're really launching it to the world. So for the next month or so, by 10th of October, anyone who has a proposal for us to do something to do together, go online, let us know, we'll talk from there, and hopefully, exactly, out of that, we will have a even more awesome digital government in Estonia and in the whole wide world. Thank you.
And hello once again. We're back with a second panel here. In the first panel, we talked about the latest trends in the fintech sector and of course also just technologies and solutions that banking can really use to scale up their business. But we can't forget about that there is also risks that banks are facing today. So in this panel, we are actually tackling the risks in fintech. So we're focusing on the risks that our fintech companies today are facing and how to tackle the possible solutions as well here. We're also covering the question how to fight against crime in financial sector and combat also criminals with one of the leading anti-money laundering startups that we have today with us here. And of course also we are talking about the latest report that has been just published by Tallinn Technical University on Estonian fintech sector, so that we're going to see also what are the trends, the security side, and so on as well here. And I'm happy again once again to introduce our panelists here. First of all, we have here Mr. Lukas Ilves, who is the head of strategy in Cartime company. So secondly, we have Mr. Taavi Tamkivi, who is the founder and CEO of Salv Technologies, so the money laundering company that I was talking about just before. And last, we have also here Dr. Laivi Laidro. She is the associate professor at Tallinn Technical University, so that she will help us to understand, again, the trends by the security also in a financial sector. To kick off with the very first topic in question here, when we talk about the banking sector, it is increasingly regulated also on counter money laundering side, different transactions and of course also activities in the banking sector. These kind of regulations are getting stricter and stricter all the time and often also affect banks' operations and customers face increasingly complex solutions also. This is what we have seen recently. How to find this kind of balance, or in other words, like a bliss point there, not to over-regulate, but at the still same time to keep our systems very secure. Which ways this kind of technology provided by Cartime first, and then we're going to jump all the way to Salv, are helping to keep this kind of customer experience still very high at the same time, so that banks' customers can still sleep peacefully knowing that their information and data and money is safe where they have that. Let's start with you here,
Thank
Lucas.
you. So, I mean, I think I want to start with the big picture, which is that the architecture of how we move value around today, I wouldn't call it broken, but it's crumbling at the edges. And Taavi will talk about some very impressive work that Salv does to solve that problem with today's architecture. But I want to focus a little bit on tomorrow's architecture. Because one of the things that we can do with blockchain and DLT technologies is we can find a new balance between the privacy and the secrecy requirements that people continue to have and expect of their money, and actually being able to conduct the large-scale analyses for AML and fraud detection that you need to carry out in today's economic world. So I mean, one of the things that the central banks that are looking at digital currencies have looked at, and that I think you'll see in crypto assets in the next few years, is that actually these technologies, which today are considered tools for money launderers, are actually going to offer ways of moving value and storing value that allow much more control over and transparency toward law enforcement. And the tricky part's going to be how we balance that transparency, which is ultimately a benefit of having a ledger that's shared and open, with the expectations that people have around privacy.
And we're going to come back to you, Lucas, a little bit later also, as they are providing blockchain technology to also central banks and of course other financial institutions, also the role of that. But I will give the word now to Davi. Maybe you can also explain this process, how not to over-regulate, but still how to keep the systems very secure.
I want to start with blockchain technologies that Lucas also mentioned, because there is a lot of transparency in the movement of value in these platforms. Like you can see wallets, you can see transactions, you can chase criminals, and it makes life much easier for the crime fighters and for the regulators to see what's going on over there. So that's really, really interesting area. But in the old sector, old banking, also old fintech sector, this kind of luxury doesn't exist yet, and that's what we're building with the bridge as well, to help those institutions to exchange information a bit more openly than they do today. But the main challenge or conflict is that regulated in this heavily regulated environment where your regulators are watching after you, or your laws are telling exactly what you need to do, it's massive spend that banks and fintechs have to make in order to be compliant with everything. And in this kind of environment, trying to be a bit innovative, to try new alternative things, to try to make things differently from the market practices, it needs really brave people, because no one wants to take the risk that maybe I'm not compliant with GDPR, maybe we're not compliant with AML. And that's the major barrier that I see. Regulators and FSAs can become more open, more supportive for the fintechs and for the banks, encouraging people to think more broadly about the core mission of the why these crime-fighting regulators exist. They exist exactly as you explained, to keep people's money safe, to keep criminals away. And what's the way to that? Entrepreneurs and companies should have more freedom to select, and that's reducing the control, reducing the pressure, and giving more openness for the people. That's core basis of the better alternative, more effective ways to beat crime, to reduce other risks in the banking sector.
Great. I would now jump to Laivi. We're so happy to have you with us today. I was reading the reports that Tallinn Technical University has published regarding the fintech sector, what are the trends, security risks, and so on and so on. It was very interesting for me to read that, but we do not have enough time to go through the entire report. I would really recommend for everybody to really read that through. But maybe you can do a sum up of that. What has been the biggest outcomes of this report that were very surprising, or maybe not so surprising, but just that really made it clear that these are the challenges when we also talk about, for example, the security sector?
Thank you. I think that trying to be brief, the main point is that what we see is that the Estonian fintech sector is steadily growing. So it has not slowed down. Also, when looking at the composition of different types of fintechs who are active here, although there is a kind of greater presence of companies which are involved in digital assets, digital lending, digital payments, or enterprise services, then actually the overall landscape is still very diverse. So there exist these different opportunities for different types of fintechs. And when looking at the development of the local ecosystem, there are clear signs that the growth has been rapid, and it has been facilitated, first of all, by the very kind of informal communication, which is possible in a small country like Estonia between all these ecosystem participants. as well as the favorable entrepreneurial environment.
Yeah, you want to reflect on that?
Yes, I wanted to add also because like I'm part of the FinanceEstonia, and I was like working also to get like understanding of this data, and I was also really impressed and surprised by the number of companies that call themselves as a fintechs or who are participating in the study, which was like real surprise for me, although I've been many years in this industry. But also like I think maybe we've been holding ourselves back in Estonia as we haven't realized what's the potential and what's the reputation globally. There are fintech associations around the world who are contacting us, want to become my friends or like sign memorandums of understandings and other documents, just they want to learn from us. So, and if you think about the presentations that we heard today also, like people have tens and tens of experience in the core banking, in the financial technology, in the crypto space. And now like this is like merging into real business value for the country and the other countries who are related to us. So like this research study itself, it was like, wow, like it's really happening actually. It's not only WISE or it's not only like few other companies, but actually it's like the ecosystem is booming here.
Yeah, and much bigger. So from the report also reflecting on that, what I was reading there, what I was surprised, like not surprised, but in a way like very happy to see that we can say that the impact of pandemic on the sector has been quite modest, I would say. The greatest challenge emerged from regulatory environment side, still all the regulations and so on. What, in your opinion, maybe I would let everybody to answer that question. How should financial institutions and government support fintech sector today?
I think when we look at our respondents, then it was clear that different types of fintechs are facing different regulatory challenges. But what was common is the desire for greater regulatory clarity. So to get more explanations on different types of requirements which are impacting fintechs. And this, I think, is one way to kind of help all the companies in the ecosystem.
Yeah, just to add that, to zoom out a bit, I'm also part of member of the European FinTech Association, which is gathering top fintechs around Europe. And it's a really small organization. And quite recently we have seen a really great number of other like large fintechs who want to join this association. And we were just discussing why it's happening, or we haven't made like great advertising or anything, but some really cool like global companies based in Estonia want to join us. And like it seems to be that during the pandemics, European Parliament, the European Commission have understood the importance of the fintech sector. Like we as entrepreneurs, we have understood it 10 years ago, but now it's coming into really top political players that, okay, we need to pay more attention and we need to improve our laws and like regulations around them. And that's the reason why the global fintechs are now joining the unions and associations, because they see that there's interest on the Parliament side and Commission side to improve the legislation around us. So that's like really powerful thing that actually COVID has triggered for the whole ecosystem here. So.
You want to reflect?
Yeah, I mean, I think reflecting on both of your comments, one of the broader points that comes out of this is that fintechs aren't just about replacing what banks do, right? They're actually about expanding the scope of financialization and finance as a tool and money as a tool into areas that currently aren't impacted by that. Whether we're talking about using that to achieve sustainability and to marshal the investments we need to create incentives for that, or whether we're talking about healthcare and wellness. So in a sense, part of what this revolution is about is bringing a sort of money logic into all these domains. And I think this is something that Estonia is very well placed to do, because we have this interdisciplinary culture that in part comes from being small. And so you'll find sort of people from different domains converging. And we also have this background in digital government as a whole, which really touches on every domain. So if we can bring sort of the finance aspect into pretty much every domain of government, then we have effectively just about the entire gamut of digitization covered by our fintechs.
I would turn back to our audience as well and remind you, you do have a chance to ask questions too. We have leading company providing blockchain, money laundering company as well here, and a person who was behind of this amazing report that I brought it out. So do use this chance and ask your questions. But now I will use this chance to continue kind of like on the same topic that we just discussed. And when we think about it in several, like the past few years or 5, 10 years even, we see more and more cases of, again, money laundering, frauds in Go financing and so on. So there is plenty of cases like that. This has really made, I would say, public sector more aware of this issue, and they, of course, when we talked about like want to regulate that a little more, but this could also cause a case where the banking sector is becoming a little bit more closed. On a positive note side here, we see that the Ministry of Finance and Bank of Estonia have really like opened up and really wanted to have a little bit stronger communication than ever before that it has existed. One of the proposed solutions by both the companies and also from the public sector point of view was to have this kind of Go operations to map a cross-sectoral development plan. Do you think that Estonia has been successful with this, when we especially talk about mapping it and the communication between the public sector and now the companies as well?
Yeah, maybe again to start from a bit of distance, like you mentioned, last 10 years or 5 years, just I like numbers, and like if I'm looking what's happening in the banking sector around the crime fighting, like if we're looking at world top biggest 50 banks, then about every like 1 out of 4 banks is getting fined. They've got fined over the last 10 years. So for the bankers and also for the people in the fintech industry, it's rather not a question, am I clean or not, or am I getting fined or not, but it's more about like when I'm getting it, because like the probability of being hit by some kind of regulatory burden or some kind of money laundering issue is huge. And like where I see it's coming actually, like what's triggering that or what's causing that, the money laundering itself or crime has been here for like hundreds of years or thousands of years. Yeah. But the point is that the social status, or like how people take it and how people perceive it, how they understand it, it's changing. Like from the people on the streets or newspaper readers, they are putting more pressures on the government, and government has to put more pressures on the financial sector. Think about 5 years ago, there was Panama Papers, which came out that like in the Panama rich people were hiding their taxes. And social reaction was so sharp through the media that like I think the bank accounts which were opened in Panama were closed down like almost 100%. Most of the banks in the world closed it down because of the social pressure that came to them through the government initiative, actually before even government initiative. And now the same thing is happening with like more classical financial crime, anti-money laundering, and governments feel that in order to keep their electors happy, they need to do something, and they need to put more pressure on the banks, which is like ultimately not ending up really well now, but actually it adds more resources, more attention for this innovation. And what's the exact plan? I haven't seen any good plans nowhere. It's more about encourage FIUs and FSAs to hire more smart people. Like in the industry side, we have like a lot of talents who know everything about crypto and who know everything about financial revolution. So if these kind of people would work also in the government sectors, then we can have more meaningful debate. It's not about closing down all the crypto companies in Estonia. It's more about like agreeing what kind of cryptos we want to allow here. Same with the fintech, same with different financial services. So it's like better experience and education in the government sector that will help definitely to get into better shape.
Well, definitely, and the crypto sector is definitely not very well regulated in most of the countries still today, even though that this is a very well used already currency as well. I would turn back to you, Lucas, and speak about the car time. When people who have been following our panels and discussions here as well, and e-Estonia itself, then they know that car time has a very long history helping secure Estonia's government infrastructure by using blockchain system called KSA, a blockchain system. What's the role of blockchain in the fintech sector? And maybe if you start talking about this also, can you talk about your collaboration or the role of using blockchain also in central banks?
Yep. So at the moment, it's a peripheral question for most of the fintech sector, right? There's a separate world of cryptocurrencies. There are sort of growing numbers of applications. Now in the last year with decentralized finance, we've started to see effectively algorithms functioning as banks and investment vehicles. But I think what's going to happen in the next few years is that as a technology, this is going to become an infrastructure that is used increasingly for existing retail and wholesale transactions. And so what we're going to see is what we might call traditional fintechs, as well as banks and financial institutions, turning to blockchain and turning to tokenization as a basic technological layer for how they move money around, how they process transactions, how they share data. And so we'll see really what is called in the blockchain space an infrastructure inversion, where today's financial services infrastructure gets layered on top of a blockchain-based infrastructure, but that in turn opens up a whole lot of new functionalities and ways of doing things. And among the parties that are doing this are central banks. I mean, central banks today are in a world of competition around money. They have to compete with cryptocurrencies. They're competing amongst each other. They're competing with privately issued monies. And that is driving them to go through a digital transformation of sorts and digitally transform cash into an asset that can be used digitally. And that naturally leads them to say, well, if we're going to issue a digital asset today, are we going to issue it as an account balance, or are we actually going to issue tokens that have programmability, that have security features, that have peer-to-peer capabilities, and that let us find a more interesting balance between privacy and the types of money laundering analyses that Tavi does. And what we're seeing is that I think central banks are going to also go in favor of a more tokenized architecture. So this is really going to become, in the next few years, the plumbing of everything around money.
Yeah, you want
to... Just to add, actually to ask on that, because it's technically and business-wise and academically, it's super exciting, but I'm always thinking, are the central banks actually ready to move, or are the things like you do, is it more about just showing that we're innovative and some fans are doing that, but actually, is it really happening in next year? So it's just a nice talk and incubation.
I think it's really happening. I think that it's going to be gradual. There's going to be a period where the existing infrastructures work in parallel. But the argument is no longer, the discussions are no longer about, oh, can we look cool and be innovative, but it's functionally, what are the benefits of one approach or another? And the big question that's always been there is, okay, there are clearly benefits in terms of programmability and automation. There are benefits in terms of security and transparency. Can you do the money laundering checks? Can you do the scalability? And I think what the work that central banks have done over the last couple of years have shown is, yes, you can. So I think we've moved beyond the, this is really cool innovation pilots into the let's actually roll up our sleeves phase of things. I think it'll probably still be a question of years, not months. Central banks are going to move slower than some commercial actors do, but we've crossed that threshold.
That's actually something which I've been always thinking, that we as entrepreneurs need to keep really close eye on these movements. Like in the crime fighting, maybe in academy as well, people are building fintechs. If it actually happens in the European level, then the whole market is very, very different. And we, as startuppers, we need to build complete new set of technology, which is a great opportunity.
We talked about the speed, and there is a question coming also from the audience side. Somebody was asking, how do you tackle the slow speed of regulations compared to what market demands are in such regulated field? Maybe I would turn to you, Laivi, to you. If you think about this issue, was there anything that came from the report also that was focusing on how we tackle this kind of slow speed of regulations and what's actually happening already in the market?
Unfortunately, there wasn't. So maybe colleagues from entrepreneurial side have more kind of insight to provide here.
As we can see from the smile from Tavi, then you have something to add here.
I don't have a statistical evidence for that, but what I see when speaking, especially with the smaller organizations, then they don't have a willingness or guts to challenge or interpret existing legislation. Actually, laws are pretty okay-ish, and they're pretty open, and you can do a lot of creative things under that. I've been operating on when I was in WISE, I was interpreting and reading laws myself, thinking with my head, and I really encourage large banks, but also fintechs, to think along with the laws, and not only getting stuck with, okay, lawyers are saying that, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, I cannot do that one. But actually you can. It's just interpreting the law in the right way, consulting with the regulators, and you can do it. It's not only about, only solution isn't about making new laws or changing it. It's about being smart about what we have already.
One point I would make is that at the end of the day, what we all want as startups is we want to have regulators that in their primary regulatory capacity are flexible and sensible, and not necessarily sandboxes, because sandboxes can actually end up becoming sand traps, where you basically, you get to play with an innovative project or two, but then you're waiting for approval for months or years. And so ultimately what regulators need to do is treat everyone on a similar basis, but then also make themselves more approachable. Because frequently for smaller companies, it's precisely these layers of bureaucracy that you have to get through, uncertainty, and a lack of a human face even on the regulator's side, which if you're a big bank maybe has been solved. If you're a small actor, you need to have a place to start.
I would take the last question as well, which also came from one of our listeners today. How to get more fintech people involved in government processes? Yeah, anybody, you want to add? And
that's what I really love here in Estonia. Right. It's super easy as an entrepreneur to get into contact with government members, with government agencies, to explain what we're doing, why we're doing. So come to Estonia, found your company here.
That's what I was about to say as well. Estonia is a small country. Everybody know each other, and especially the circle of people who are very active and also in this sector. You want to add, and then I will let.
If you're from a government and you're listening, all I'd say is just call them up, write them an email, because generally, if you get called by a regulator and or by someone in government, and they're not calling to impose a fine, you actually want to talk to them, you're interested in what they've got to say, and generally most of these fintechs are pretty approachable.
So it's easy to get into contact with ex-presidents and stuff.
Well, in Estonia, yes, if we talk about countries that have a little bit more people, then I guess this is more tricky, but of course you can find your channels. Any suggestion from your side, and then we can finish
I think the cooperation is the key. And not just between the fintechs and government, but all ecosystem players and also amongst fintechs. Yeah. So how to kind of push together, initiate something, so these are the solutions. Yeah.
I still had tons of more questions, but unfortunately we are running out of time already, have run out of time. So I will have to sum it up from my side here, but I have some good news for you as well. You can also, as everybody else said already today, I will be also attending Money 2020 conference in Amsterdam next week. We're going to have these panels also happening there, so please do join us. And you can, of course, also ask your own questions and be part of our conversation next week in Amsterdam. So from my side, a very big thank you, first of all, to our panelists here that had joined us today. And also from my side, thank you to everybody who has joined us today, and I wish you a very pleasant day.
I am standing here without a tablet because there are no more questions to ask. There are no more guests to introduce either. Time for a quick summary. I think we found out a lot about banking technology as it exists today and what the future holds for that sector. What about cryptocurrencies? What about regulations and privacy and anti-money laundering concerns as well? I certainly had an interesting time, and I hope that so did you. A few more points before we let you go completely. First of all, as Annette already mentioned, Money 2020 in Amsterdam is around the corner, and we have an Estonian pavilion, D120, that you can visit to hang out with all the lovely people that you saw today. Also, a small recommendation from our side. Of course, you can get in touch with the e-Estonia Briefing Center under e-estonia.com to book a briefing to understand more about the digital society in Estonia, and we can also arrange the contacts with all of these people that you've met here today. And last but not least, this is of course not the last digital discussion that we are offering. The next one will happen on the 28th of October, and it will be around the entire ecosystem of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of different solutions from all the different sectors that you can imagine, and I hope that you will tune in. We will certainly tune in. We will be back on stage. Until then, stay safe and healthy and have a lovely day. Thank you and goodbye.